Boom. Hey, everybody, this is Teddy Burriss with Burriss Consulting, and you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy, my good friend, and myself. My business is all about social media strategy, LinkedIn coaching, training, and support. And I have a whole lot of fun helping business professionals and sales professionals. But I have a whole lot of fun every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time when I show up for the Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy show. Let me have my good friend, Mr. Randy Wooden, introduce himself.
Hey, folks. Thanks, Teddy, by the way. Thank you, Susan Rooks, for joining us today. Randy Wooden, I'm with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, right here in the Triad. And today is kind of a sunny day, so that's a good thing here in Winston-Salem. I run our professional center, and as you probably could guess, we work with folks typically who are in a professional role or aspire to one. Maybe they're recent college grad, or maybe they're my age and they're wondering what's next and how to get there. And part of what got this whole show started a year ago now, it's been a year and a week, was that very fact. Is we got sent home, and Teddy and I got to talking a little bit and said, is there a show? Is there something we can do to help job hunters have a little fun, be informative, that kind of a thing? And so one thing led to another, and we've had a great run. We're now into our second year of bringing in guests that can talk not just about job hunting, but also about professional development, how to play better with others, that kind of a thing. And so this week is no exception. By the way, if you have comments and questions, put them in the chat box. Teddy's going to keep an eye on that. So we're good there. And I keep seeing new faces, new cities. So again, if you're watching us, let us know where you're watching us from. But the grammar goddess all the way from Massachusetts is here today, Susan Rooks. And Susan, I met you through LinkedIn.
Yes,
which is kind of a cool thing, and we can talk more about that. But let's turn it your way, and if you could just give folks a little bit of idea about your background.
Well, one of the questions you had asked me, and by the way, thank you so much, both of you, for asking me to be on the show. I'm still laughing about the whole idea. It's wonderful, and it gives me a chance to at least reach maybe a few more people.
Yeah.
Back in 1995, I was unemployed. And a friend noticed a big ad in the Boston Globe newspaper that said something to the idea of, if you are a public speaker and you want to work with the best and biggest company in the world, call us. And for some reason, this person thought I fit that role. I had done some public speaking back in the day at a drug rehab, but I didn't call that public speaking. I called that helping other people. So my mind wasn't in that role, but I had nothing else to do. I thought, what the heck? I will go find Somerville, which is a town next to Boston, but I wasn't really familiar with it. And I met the vice president of Fred Pryor Seminars. That was the name back in the day. Nice guy, something like 6'7". I remember him being very large. We were told, prepare a 7 or 8 minute video, God help us all, on some aspect of business. I didn't feel too qualified to do that, but I thought, well, you know what the heck, go, drive, find, do. I was sitting outside that little office for a few minutes at the hotel I found, and he said, oh, there's nobody else here. Do you want to come in and do your talk? Yes, I do. I want to get it over with now, please. Thank you. I've seen the video. Boy, oh boy, was I awful. Mama, I was terrible because I was so nervous, and I knew I was being videoed, and I knew so much rested on it. So I left, sat outside for a few more minutes, and he came back out because no one else had shown up yet to do another video. And we chit-chatted, we schmoozed, we did that and this. I went home, figured, okay, Susan, listen, you tried. Good for you. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. Hi, Ms. Rooks. This is whoever it was from Fred Pryor. We liked your video. I have still wondered 25 years later how much it took her to say that, because it was so bad. We'd like to offer you an opportunity. Would you like to teach either computers or accounting?
Great.
Yay.
Third option is what?
Well, yeah, that was one of those, like, okay. And actually the accounting turned out to be more of budgeting, which didn't help me at all. But I knew nothing about computers. We're talking 1995. I still don't know much, but boy, I said, well, I'll try the one you just mentioned, budgeting or accounting. He said, great. I should have known by the tone in her voice. Nobody wanted to teach that one. My second day out, and how we learned was we watched somebody else very skilled in that topic. They would send us a 6-hour video. We're talking a whole day on one topic. And we'd look and we'd say, oh, that's how you do it. That's how you explain it. Fine. Second day, a very large man stands up in the class and says, I don't know what you're doing up there, lady, but you are the worst presenter I've ever seen or heard. And he stormed out. And oh, gonna be fun. At the end of the day, I quit, but I kind of couldn't quit because it was 2 weeks of promise. And they said, well, what else would you teach? I said, I don't know, women's topics, which is what we called them back in 95. And he said, well, though, those are kind of all taken. Would you be interested in the grammar one? Sure. How bad could it be? I figured, it couldn't be any worse than budgeting. I did okay for about 3 months. Not bad. Nobody stormed out. Nobody got up and yelled at me. And a nice woman came up to me at the end of a class and said, dear, I love how you present your material. You're really good. And I made a couple of notes in the workbook. You might want to just check them out. And Randy, you're going to love this because your mother's going to love this. I go back to my hotel room, smiling the whole way. I couldn't stand it. Opened it, and every page had red marks. Every single blooming page. Probably there were a couple that didn't, but it felt as though. Yeah. And I stood there and thought, here's the difference, because I didn't care about the budgeting part. I did my best, but I didn't internally care. I didn't give a rat's rump. It was like, yeah, good numbers, knock yourself out. This one was, oh my gosh, I didn't do that right. I said that wrong, but that's what that person in the, okay, look up the book. Oh, wait, that is wrong. I took about a month and I went diving into every grammar and every style guide I could to find out what's the truth of each section, because it just about killed me to be wrong. I mean, I've been reading since I was a little kid, but reading doesn't necessarily guarantee that you know the rules for things that I was teaching, like where do the commas go? Where does a semicolon go? What is a semicolon? It was remarkable. And I stayed with them for 5 years, loved every minute of it. I ended up being a corporate trainer in the companies that would call them and say, we need somebody to teach this topic or that topic. I got international trips. It was amazing. But you asked me how I got the title, because this is not I didn't do that. We used to have an 800 number when we were on the road. We could call back to the group that was this topic and say, help, what are you doing on page 14? I am totally stumped there. I have no idea what I'm supposed to say. And somebody would inevitably answer. Because I did that deep dive, I began to get how to answer, and I began to answer. And one day somebody said, thank you so much, Ms. Grammar Goddess, or something close to that. And I went, oh, I like that. Ooh, I like that. It's alliterative, it's funny. And there's nothing much more boring, Randy, for most people. Oh, yay, I'm going to go take a grammar class.
Yeah, I can't wait. Where do I sign up for that? So that's where you got the name. So our topic, broad topic today is how to look and to sound as smart as you are.
Yeah. Dang Skippy.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive into some topics. If you have questions, there's always the question of, well, I've always heard this is how it's supposed to be said. And I don't know if we'll have time to get into some of the weeds with that, but we all have questions and wonder about grammar. Are we putting our best foot forward, particularly in a professional environment? And let's face it, in a professional environment and really in everyday life, we form judgments based on visual, based on what we hear, how people act, and so forth. And so to the degree that we can impact our, what I'll call image, I think it has value. And so Susan's joined us today to kind of sift through some of that stuff. So you talked about the corporate training and how you got to be a grammar goddess. And here's an obvious softball, but why is grammar important? Let's start with the obvious first.
It's important only because when we make a really bad goof, we're apt to turn people away who never knew us and never will give us a chance, because they look at somebody who is misusing a pronoun or misusing a homophone, the words that sound exactly the same. I'll talk about those later if I can, but don't mean the same thing. They say it out loud, they type it the way it sounds. And anyone who's alert to it is going to, if you have more than a couple of them, is going to think maybe completely wrong that you have no idea what you're talking about. And it's not fair, because other people's expertise may not be grammar, which is why I ask people, please, if you have a question, come to me and I'll answer it for you if I can. But it does matter to enough people so that we should be aware of where is it that we don't do well. And if it's homophones, okay. If it's the pronouns, okay, I can definitely help people with those, just so that they look and sound as smart as they are. My catchphrase.
I like it.
And
I like what Susan said. It's important to enough people. It should be important to us.
Yeah.
And that's not just the written word, but that's also the spoken word. So it goes both ways. And I know many people, perhaps on this call, Teddy, who have really embraced things like Grammarly, spell check, and so forth. I know a lot of folks, that's not their bag. Spelling, and for that matter, grammar and syntax and all these other things, either they don't know or don't care. And technology has helped in many ways to give us hints and correct mistakes. But it's not perfect either. And so I think there's some tips and tricks that you can share that might help folks through that process. I know I see things, Teddy, I have Grammarly also.
Yeah.
I don't think I told you that on Monday.
Oh, no.
I do. It's the free version.
Yeah.
And
Have you turned it on, Randy?
Yeah, I'm smart enough to turn it on. But for, well, kind of on the 5th try, it worked. But just know that if you are struggling with grammar and with written word, spoken word, there are tools out there that can help you. Just like there are tools to help you learn software and other parts of how to do work. This is just another part of you as a professional. The Grammarly equivalent for spoken words, and we need that. All right, so let's move on. What are some in publications? Because you do a lot of editing.
Yeah.
A lot of editing. In fact, didn't you edit, was it Melissa Hughes that was on a few weeks ago?
I did her second book because I read
Yep.
the first one, and she and I agreed it could have probably been even better, only from the standpoint of, copy editing, content editing, looking at it and thinking, she is brilliant in brain stuff. She scares me to death. She's also brilliant enough to be able to teach us brain stuff so that we want to know it and learn it and do it well, because she doesn't talk at us. She just embraces us and allows us to get that. I love it. Yeah, I worked on her book.
What are the common mistakes that people make when it comes to publications? What are some of the written word things that jump out there to you?
The biggest ones, pronouns. More people use myself when they should be using me, or they use me when they should be saying I. For instance, I have a lot of people who say, me and John are going to go to the movies. Okay, if you take John out of the sentence, would you ever honestly say me is going to the movies? Chances are good you wouldn't. Somehow you put John back in and it sounds right. And of course it has to be John and I. Take John out, I am going, add John in, John and I are going. Very simple when you think about it. The tough one is,
I'm glad I learned that when I was nearly 50 years old.
yeah, well, hey, listen, Teddy, every day that we know stuff is good. The other one that's even tougher is the ones that end in self. Myself, himself, themselves. Those self words are only supposed to be used when they reflect back to the subject of a sentence. So I can say, I listened to myself, meaning I and myself, same person. John cannot say, Susan listened to myself. Susan and myself in terms of John, not the same person. So we're supposed to say it when we are, but not if we're not. So John should say, I listened to myself, or I listened to her. So self can only be applied if it's the same person as the beginning of the sentence. Boy, do people make that one. I know what they're doing. I've even corrected it and they've said, no, wait a minute. No, I have to use myself. No, not in that sentence. And that's okay. Again, they're smart where they are. This is where I happen to know stuff.
So Mike, talking about referring to ourselves, Mike brought up this question, how, and I'm gonna put it in a broader context than what Mike did. If we're trying to impress someone, should we be careful with our regional words like y'all?
It depends on the context, Teddy. Honestly, if you could be impressing somebody and be having a really big fun party impressing, or you can be in a rigid executive office. If you're up in the Northeast or you're from the y'all area, I wouldn't recommend it necessarily as a first way to be speaking. If you get more comfortable, I have no issue with regionalisms. I do, though, think we should be aware of them so that we don't use them when it's not appropriate. That's all. People who know me realize I know the rules. I also know when to break them. At least most of the time. I know that they can be broken. The effect will be different. And that's something I work with my clients to say, this is what you wrote. This is what you should be writing grammatically. But your whole thing is about something that's very careful. So I want you to follow my rule for this, but later, maybe not. It's all about context to me anyway.
What I just heard you say is y'all listen to her.
Yeah, there we go. I hope you all do.
What are some other ones that you can think of? I'll throw one out there that I hear quite frequently, and it's the word you, Y-O-U, and is it you and Tommy went to the movies, or is it Tommy and you went to the movies?
Either's fine. More often we will say Tommy and you went, but it doesn't matter. That's not going to be a difficult. Where it's difficult is when you start with I. For some reason, it's harder to say I and Tommy went. It's much more natural to say Tommy and I went. Grammatically, sometimes real life butts up against grammar. Grammar almost always loses.
Because I always thought the pronoun typically goes second or goes last.
It's conventional to go second, but it's not a rule to go second.
Really?
There's
Okay.
a difference. So Tommy and I went, but you and Tommy went. It works.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I learned something in the first 16 minutes of our show today. So that's great. There's a word that some of us may not be aware of what the Oxford comma is, but if I want to get a rise out of you, that's what I bring up. And see, look at her face light up. This is it. So what is the Oxford comma, and why should anybody care?
The Oxford comma is the one that is in items in a series where you have John has cats, comma, dogs, comma, and elephants in his backyard. Items in a series. It's the comma that comes before and or. I push hard. As an editor, I don't push hard on most of the rules. If somebody really wants to not, fine, knock yourself out. This one I push for because there can be a sentence where leaving it out causes either total confusion or laughter that you never in 1,000 years expected. And if people think that the last two items in the series go together because you didn't put a comma in, you've got no defense. Now, they may come to you and say, did you mean this or that? The likelihood also is that they will just go with what they think is right, even if it isn't. And you might have heard there was a big lawsuit a couple of years ago.
Really?
A multi-million-dollar lawsuit on leaving the Oxford comma out of items of a series, successfully argued by the defense that without the comma, we had absolute right to think that the last two went together. And multi-million dollars. I don't think most of us are going to go down that route. I do know that if you make the habit typical, I just always put it in because you're going to be right every time. The problem can be leaving it out and having somebody not understand. And how do you say, yeah, but you should have known? That's kind of nasty. You could have put the comma in.
Yeah, Teddy?
There's a book, you may have read it, Susan, or heard about it, called Eats,
Shoots, and Leaves. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Leaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another one too. Isn't there another one too? I had grandma for lunch or something. And anyway, it's just one of those memes out there that somebody left the comma out. So back to you, Randy. Because
I got another one for you. This
of course
is
you
one.
do. You're loaded with them.
Yeah, this is one. And of course, I have my hands where I'm knee deep in resumes most every day here with Goodwill. And so you run across what I'll call a laundry list of keywords, for example. And so where I'm going with this is when it's appropriate to use semicolons and commas when listing things. So I'm going to give you an example. I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm going to go to the store. And so in my sentence, I'm going to buy red, white, and blue paper. I'm also going to buy scissors, and I'm also going to buy a stapler. Okay. I'm thinking, now correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got likes here. You've got paper, scissors, and stapler. Those are three equals.
Yep.
The red, white, and blue describe only the paper. So the red, white would have, and the Oxford comma would come in separating red, white, and blue. And then you'd have a semicolon after paper, and then a semicolon after what do I say?
Whatever you say.
Scissors and
I
stapler.
mentally put 2 semicolons in.
to
As you were
separate
saying.
to separate likes, because so often I see comma after comma and I'm thinking,
No.
that means they're all equal. Are you saying red, white, blue, paper, scissors, stapler? All no, they're not.
No, they're not.
They're at, what are they called? Adjectives, right?
Yeah.
To describe
They're describing the paper. Yeah.
the paper. Yeah.
Yep.
So be mindful of that when you're putting together a sentence where you're talking about perhaps different flavors of something or colors of something or different sizes of one certain product. Keep in mind that likes are separated by likes. And so whether it's comma or semicolon, I think, and again, those are kind of things that most people just kind of go, I don't care.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at ways to differentiate, especially if you're the grammar goddess, you got to get those things right. Teddy, did we get
got some people throwing
we've
out
got a couple
statements.
Okay.
Denise says one of her pet peeves is when people write an instead of A-N-D.
Well, okay.
Steve threw out that, one of the things he sees all the time that drives him batty is that when people do their, T-H-E-Y, apostrophe R-E.
Yeah, the homophones. Yeah.
Yeah, all the homophones. Amy says she loves the Oxford comma. I hated it for the longest time. I hated it, and now I kind of accept it. And I get the reason. Put it in there to be careful. And I now Grammarly can't beat me, because before Grammarly goes, "Hey Teddy, you forgot it," I got it in there.
Yeah. Speaking of Grammarly, let me just throw this out.
Yeah.
I write for an organization called Biz Catalyst 360 with Dennis Pitoko, and he uses Grammarly because he's got, I don't even know now, what is it, 300 writers. And so he has to do something to make sure that most of it's okay. Well, I got one back that I had written, and I read a sentence and thought, wait, whoa, stop, pop. What the heck? Grammarly, and I asked him, we went on a phone call because I was so upset. I'm a funny duck. I said, why did you or someone put a comma there and a semicolon there? And he said, well, Grammarly told me to. So I went, okay, the word however can be used in a couple of grammatical ways. In my sentence, I was only using it as the actual word that it is. But the minute Grammarly saw the word however, semicolon right after it, okay, stop now. And actually, I think it was before, because that's where it would come. If you have a sentence, semicolon, however, comma, that's what it did. I wasn't using it as a grammatical device. So my thought with Grammarly is it's better than nothing. I think the paid version might be even better. This was the free version, and I'm not experienced in the paid one to be sure. But the only issue I have is you can't ask Grammarly, what are you asking him? If it gives you 4 or 5 possibilities, this, this, or this, and you don't know whether a semicolon goes here or there, how are you going to pick the correct one when a semicolon is the equivalent of mystery to you? It's hard. That's the editor's job, is to say, okay, this is why I'm changing it, in case you haven't asked, because we have a rule for that. But when I saw it on my own, it was like, that was my main first exposure to Grammarly. And I was deeply saddened by it, because it was so wrong.
Yeah.
But who would have known? It's just me.
I'm with you. I'm not a grammar professional, but I often run into situations where I say to Grammarly, we ain't doing it.
Yeah, that's wrong. Sorry, nice try.
Yeah, my mom was a high school English teacher, and so I was brought up with proper grammar, writing, speaking, and for the most part, I still do pretty well with that. I guess as I get older, I get a little more lax here and there. I don't know, but there are certain things that you kind of see, and it doesn't sound right to you as you, and commas, whether Oxford or other ones, that's another thing. People stick commas, and they also put apostrophes when it's a plural.
We haven't enough time. Oh my God.
Yeah, and you read this and you see, there are 20 pages in the book, and it's apostrophe S, and I'm like, where'd that come from? But commas slow our mind down when we read something. We're actually sort of saying it to ourselves, and a lot of commas, while they may appear to be they're grammatically correct, perhaps, it slows the mind down And so people may look at that and say that doesn't belong there. Is there any kind of a rule? And I don't know if there is, but any kind of a rule that we can make up that's that says when should we use commas? Are there?
There are about 20 rules already, Randy. I'm not even going to try to add to them.
All right.
You're right. There are times when if it's a
Yeah.
very short sentence, and even if it is a compound sentence, which technically should have a comma, if it's only 7 or 8 words, I probably won't throw one in because it does break the flow of a very short sentence. Now, if you've got 20 words and it's a compound sentence, the comma gives some relief that you can read and for a second go, oh, okay, and then find the other half of it. So again, justification. I'll tell you the single rule that makes me crazy. All right, one out of many.
Yeah.
In American grammar, we're talking colons.
Right.
American grammar rule states very clearly that if you are creating a list in a sentence, not the bullet points, in a sentence, you cannot put a colon after any word that would not logically end a sentence. So you cannot write the people who were at the meeting are colon and then list them. Are does not end a sentence. So for what it's worth, it's one of the dumbest rules I've ever imagined. Because for me, punctuation is supposed to be, as you said, helping, clarity. What confusion would there be if you put the colon in or you took the colon out? It's not supposed to be there though. And to me, it makes absolutely no sense to have come up with a rule that doesn't help. That's what makes me crazy. So my advice to most people
said these were American rules, Susan.
Yeah, although this is American rules, darling. I am really good at American rules, and I've learned a lot about others' versions when I've had to. But I'm not going to pretend that I can tell you what you do in India or Britain or in Canada. Guaranteed, I can't. Okay, I had something else, but go ahead. There was something else. I don't remember what it was.
Somebody asked you to repeat the rules, so I think that's
Okay.
kind of being a little sarcastic. I think, really.
No, I got it.
Okay.
What I heard Susan
I'll do it one more time.
Okay.
You can create 2 kinds of lists. One could be bulleted down, something, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Brr, fine.
Okay.
Nobody cares what you put in front of the colon there. Seriously, they don't. If you're creating a list within a sentence, it goes sideways. And you're writing something like the people who will be at the meeting are John, Jeff, and Chris, Oxford comma. The rule says you cannot put the colon after the word are because you could not end a sentence right there. You cannot, if you can't put a period, you can't put a colon in a sentence. Again, dumb rule to me, because my whole world, I know what I was going to say, is about, are you going to embarrass your company or your boss, or are you going to confuse the reader? And if none of that's going to happen, why would you create a rule like that? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So,
hey, Teddy, we're about halfway through the show. You want to do your halfway, and we've got a couple other comments that people have. The old it's question and some other stuff. So we'll get
bring
to
them
those.
on.
So, hey, everybody, this is Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. I'm Teddy, and my good friend Randy's here. Our special guest today is Susan Rooks, aka the Grammar Goddess. And so far in the first half an hour, we're having a freaking riot and learning, which is they're equally of value to us. So, Randy, back to you.
Yeah, looking and sounding as smart as you are. That's our topic. And Susan Rooks joins us, the Grammar Goddess from Massachusetts, right? Do you have a view of the bay where you are right now?
I'm at the top part of Buzzards Bay, which many people have heard of. I mean, I've lived in Massachusetts all my life, Randy. I've never heard of where I now live, Buttermilk Bay, which is like the top of a snowman, the head.
Right.
Oh, by the way, there's also a little Buttermilk Bay, which is kind of an ear. But it's on the top, and I live 4 houses up from the beach. Poor me.
Ah, well.
Utterly wonderful.
And you've got pets there too. And just so you've got, and we may hear them too. So give a listen.
They're pretty good with this. Because I close their front windows. I close the shades. Yeah. Otherwise you would hear them.
All right. Some things that have just kind of popped into the chat box. It's the old it's and it's. So let's tackle that one.
Okay.
How do we know what's what?
I probably Grammarly would know that one, but here's the deal. There are only 2 versions of it's. There are not 3. There's, okay, go back to apostrophes. Oh, I'm going to hate myself. Apostrophes can be used in a couple of areas, and one is contractions, meaning we have it is, and we took out the I from is, and we pushed them together, and you can't just write it is without the apostrophe. The apostrophe shows something was left out that used to be there. Normally it's two words that you took a couple of letters out from the second word, you shoved it up against the first word, and you showed everybody by that.
Like can't, aren't,
Can't, cannot, will not,
didn't.
which by the way, in my grammar,
And y'all.
and y'all, you gotta work that in, don't you?
Oh,
buddy?
yeah.
Huh? Don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Don't you? CHA, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, mind and mouth just completely divorced.
It's the
No,
whole
that's
it's
the other
thing.
one, it's.
The other reason is it's hard because most of the time possessives do have an apostrophe at the end. And unfortunately, pronoun possessives don't. So if you're saying the dog and its tail, the ITS is not it is tail. It's the other one, ITS, plain and simple. And there's no such thing as ITS apostrophe. Nice try, folks. It's bad enough we have two. Don't add a third one in that we don't even have.
Randy, are we paying her for this education today? Did we budget that in?
You'd have been taking some good notes on this thing.
Yeah.
Well, I hope people, I really do hope people will. Now, here's what I
Mhm.
tell everybody when we get to this point. If you're confused and you frequently misuse it's and its, or the there, or any of the other homophones, those words that sound the same but are spelled differently and mean something very different, memorize one. If it's a pair, memorize one. Know absolutely cold what ITS means, or know exactly what IT apostrophe S means. And
Yeah,
then
so-
if that's not fitting your sentence, throw the other one in, because it beats heck out of saying, I don't know, we can pick one and throw it in and maybe it'll work. Pick one out of the two and learn it if you can.
Mhm.
Now the three, that's going to be a little thing with the fairs. They all start with THE. Yeah, there's no such thing as THIER. Nice try, folks, but they all start with THE. They
Yeah,
really
the whole
do.
thing, the whole it's thing, if you can say it is,
It is.
then it
and it's
becomes
the
the
apostrophe.
contraction. Then it's
Very
the
simple.
apostrophe,
And
as
if you
opposed
can't
to
say it in
saying,
that sentence, don't use that one, please.
and then if you've got something like the dog's tail, that's a possessive.
That's a
and
possessive.
Not a contraction. It's, so DOG apostrophe S. So that's the it's and it's. The there, and there. Any tips for that? I mean, memorize two of them or what? I don't know.
Yeah,
What
well,
do
if you
do?
can possibly,
Right.
you know what, you can go through your own writing, check all three and see where they are and say, which one seems to be giving me the most grief? Maybe I'm always using THERE correctly. Okay, good, off the table. What about the other two? What's making me crazy here? Which one can I learn so that I'm better with that? Maybe it won't be perfect, but it's kind of a matter of just trying to limit the choices. This is a section in my almost finished PowerPoint punctuation program that is hard to explain when you can't talk to people. It's like, okay, how do you help them with contractions and possessives? Oh boy. And it's very common.
Hey, let me ask you this, and then this may be something that Teddy can put in the notes. I mean, certainly people can follow you on LinkedIn. You've got
I
over
wish they would.
30,000 followers. I know, I see every morning, and
31,000 and something.
yep, love some of the stuff you put out. She puts out these words that I think maybe 3 people in America know what they mean, and she hits these words that, I mean, it looks like a Scrabble game gone awry, and there are all these random letters, and I go, what the heck does that mean? And I pretty good vocabulary, but I ain't heard them things yet. So that is just, it's really, really something that
I ain't heard them either, baby. Most of them I would say 10% I've seen, but if you say to me, what does it mean? It would be, great question. I don't know.
Use it in a sentence, please. And maybe I can figure it out based on context.
Maybe.
You mentioned homophones.
Yeah.
You mentioned those. Help us understand by definition, what's that? And also what's a palindrome?
Okay, if I remember, palindrome is something that reads forwards and backwards the exact same way.
It is.
Something about air, I saw Elba, that's what's his name back in the day said. It's a back and forth, it reads the same. There was actually a funny meme I put out a month or so ago that had, I don't think it's correct, I don't think it's real. This is the this is the fear of palindromes. And somebody had written the autohomophobia, and it went back and forth correctly. And it was hysterical. I loved
It
it.
is. I stole it, by the way, and put it on Facebook. So
Oh, good. There you go.
yeah.
Yeah, you saw that one. Homophones are
don't-
literally the it's, there, phase. I was reading a book the other day, and somebody wrote and didn't correct it. She wasn't phased by that. PHASED. No, it should have been FAZED, meaning she wasn't afraid of it. Oh my word. I can't read a book anymore without finding things that did anybody do this book? Yeah. So homophones, think of the word phone, hearing. Homophones are the ones that sound the same, but they're not spelled correctly. They're not spelled the same, and they don't mean the same thing. And they are the devil's. It's awful how badly they hurt us, because we just write what we hear in our brain. We go, done.
Example, maybe hour and hour, HOUR and OUR.
Yeah, same thing.
Two different things.
There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. The other thing I find, and this is right on my LinkedIn profile because somebody gave me these gifts, there's a word public that a lot of people write about, okay? PUBLIC. And yet sometimes they leave the L out. They type the word, and Grammarly is not necessarily going to jump on it. Spell check will do nothing for you because you spelled pubic correctly, but it's not probably the word you meant. And I had somebody say to me, but Susan, I check every time to make sure I don't have it in there. I said, okay, question. What do you check for? He said, what do I check for? I check for public. I said, and I'll bet you found it in a lot of places, didn't you? And he went, yeah, I did. How come I didn't see pubic? Because you didn't check for it. If you have a word that you know you don't want to ever show up in your writing, do the search find for the one you don't want each time, because otherwise it's going to hide in plain sight, and somebody is going to read it and say, writer.
Hey, along that same line, Teddy, I know you've done searches on LinkedIn for, well, you take it.
That's where I'm going. Yeah. I want to go to Todd Porter's question, but I'm going to tell you the story real quick. Todd Porter wants to know, for homophones, where do you go to find words that if you don't know which word to use? I'll get to that question in a minute. I'm going to tell a story. So every year I do a Manger report, MANGER. I do a Manger report of, these are people who are general mangers. They're department mangers. They're public mangers. And I every year I find close to 100 people who I know who are mangers. The newest one I'm going to start doing is pubic relations. So I'm looking for pubic relations professionals, and unfortunately, I know about 15 pubic relations professionals.
Yep. Manger and manager. I mean, and it's so easy to do. That's what's so sad.
Yeah.
Check for what you don't want.
You want to speak to Todd's question for homophones? Where do you go if you don't know which word to use?
Google. Oh, come on, guys. Google one of them and see what it means. If it doesn't mean what you were hoping for, put the other one in, because that means you have to know them. You could also type, and I've done this, typical homophones online, and you probably get a list in alphabetical order of the most common. It'll probably be like 4,000 words, but it would help you maybe look and go, okay, there's the phase and phase. Son of a gun. Now I see them. Now I know. And again, memorize one if you're not going to ever have to worry about both. But Google for me is wonderful. Even when I'm editing, I'll look at a word and think, wait a minute, whoa. I don't think that that's being used the way it's supposed to be. I go right out on Google and say, type it in and go, what's this definition? Oh, it is. Oh, good. I just learned something.
Hey, we've got a few more talking points I know you wanted to touch on, and I wanted to make sure we do that. Maybe we can work in another comment that folks have. One of the things that you asked about, what is so special about editing other people's work? What is so special about it to you?
Learning. Learning how big the world is. Learning the diversity of not just the people, but what they do for a living. Learning what they know. The Melissa Hugheses of the world. I mean, people who know stuff that you think, are you serious? You actually know that?
Yeah.
That's why I don't jump all over people with the poor grammar. I am really good at what I'm really good at. I'm not good at what I'm not good at. I mean, technology, we've chatted about. I mean, I'm lucky I'm on this whatever you call this thing, webinar, because to me, this is scary to click on and make sure it works. Wow. For some people, it's nothing. I mean, 7-year-old kids could probably do it. So I'm aware of the wild world that we're living in and how many smart people there are in places that I've never even imagined, in ways that I've never imagined. And I honor every single one of them. And so what if they can't spell phase? I can, together, because I'm a collaborative editor. That's the thing I think I would like everybody to know. I'm not a you will by God, Oxford comma. I'm not, other than that, a you will by gosh do it my way. This is your writing, your article, your audience, your stuff. I'm just going to help you shine if I can.
Yeah, and not just only the content of the grammar and so forth, but or you talk about knowledge like with Melissa and so forth, but also somebody's character and their personality. Sometimes people didn't grow up with the proper grammar. They didn't. It wasn't taught.
No.
Sufficiently enough, and for any number of reasons, it's just not something that has been given a whole lot of maybe attention. And so they could be very good folks, smart in so many other ways. I got to ask you a tip here. All right, I'm writing my own resume, and spell check is only as good as it is. Then we've talked that and Grammarly and the whole thing. All right. So do you have a tip? I've got a tip, but I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts. Do you have any tips on how to really proofread your own resume?
Your own anything out loud. Start with out loud, word at a time. Go into a quiet place. Don't let your dogs be barking at you. Also, before you read it, if you have the time, put it away. My own stuff, I occasionally will find something. I think, oh my goodness, I'm glad I haven't published that yet. Put it away for an hour, a day. Let your brain go everywhere else it wants to go. Let it go, enjoy your life. Come back and read it, because fresh eyes will sometimes see, oh shoot, ooh, look what I wrote. No, I didn't mean that. But out loud is also a really good way, one word at a time. I've had people say you can read it backwards. You can. I'm not sure how much value that adds, but anything that gives you a space, a time. And if you have anyone else who would be willing to read it, just to check, can't hurt.
Good advice on that. Any, Teddy, I don't know, is there anything in the chat box?
Yeah. Todd wants to know, Todd put it in a question, when's it okay to use MGR versus the word manager? When's it okay to abbreviate, I don't know, it's titles for the most part versus write them out completely?
Context. If you're writing to a buddy and you really have to get it done fast and you've got like 12 seconds to do it, I'll go with MGR. But when I allow people to relax the rules, that I'm hoping that they know that what they're doing at that moment. They're not thinking MGR works always. They're saying, for this one email that I've got to send to Teddy today before noon, and it's 3 of, I'm going to abbreviate like crazy because he's going to know what I meant and he's not going to care. But I've had people say, well, then when do I do it right? When it matters. You're writing a resume, it matters. You're writing to your boss, it matters. You're writing something about your boss, it really matters. I mean, knowing the rule is one thing, knowing when to break it's another, knowing when you really need to stick to it is another. And that's something I can offer people and say, well, who are you writing it to? What's it for? What consequences will there be if you don't follow proper grammar? Because that's all part of the equation, depending on what we're talking about.
So Randy, I got a question. I'd love to ask.
You must have a question.
And you don't have to answer it if you don't want to answer it. You can say, Teddy, I reserve the right to not offer an opinion. How about the people who send emails via cell phone, and at the bottom of their signature, it says, please excuse my typos as I'm typing on an iPhone. What's your opinion of that?
Are you asking me or Teddy? Randy, you're Teddy.
Well, yeah, I'll start with you. Do you have an opinion about that, or?
No. I think it's showing that I don't mind being careless.
Maybe.
I'm sorry. If you're going to put it, then you know you do. Therefore, if you know you do and you know you shouldn't, then why are you doing it? And why are you alerting me to it? No, typos make me crazy. I've made them.
Randy, I'm going to share my thought and then hear your opinion. I agree with Susan. I think we know the cell phone's going to change the spelling on us. We don't need to call that out.
God, yes, it is.
You know, I think don't call it out. Randy, you have a thought?
No, no, I don't. I agree. I have to make a quick comment though. Susan was talking about everybody who has different skills and she's very good with grammar. And if you'll notice in the background, Teddy is the ultimate leading edge technology guru. Step aside there, Teddy, for a second.
Are you talking about my phone?
Move your
Put your
butt.
put your phone on mute, will you, for just a second?
I'm sorry, man. I forgot to do that.
There we go.
But
He's
My phone, I put my phone on mute.
yeah, and he's got his typewriter there and his Rolodex.
And Steve made notice to my Rolodex.
Rolodex, woo.
Don't you have a Rolodex, Susan? Well, am I the only one with a Rolodex?
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to get a little short.
Little,
Yeah,
There you go,
it's
Jeff.
all for effect. Teddy's one of the sharpest minds when it comes to leading edge stuff on social media that I know of. We've got some other ones that are coming up in the next
Jeff
few
Young
weeks,
is
too.
astounding.
He is.
I'm just going to push this out there. If you're not following Jeff Young, you're making a
Yeah.
big mistake if you're on LinkedIn, because he is one of 3 people that I have learned from in the last 5 years to grow my following now to 31,000 or whatever it is. And it's not the number, it's the fact that I'm able to reach and help more people.
Mhm.
And I also teach the LinkedIn basics. Jeff teaches LinkedIn for real, like the kind of thing where he sits there and says, throw questions at me, go ahead.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be caught dead doing that. I need to know what I know ahead of time.
Jeff's
He
good people.
is remarkable.
We let's do a kind of quick hit thing, and then we'll ask you to summarize. Okay, now we're talking about I'm a job hunter, or I'm also not a job hunter, but I'm in business. Either way, the importance of emails and texting, and we talked about the corrections and so forth.
Yeah.
How I guess official, if I'm sending a business email, how official looking does that need to be? And do you have any guidelines on the length of an email and its effectiveness?
Well, I've always thought that any email should only cover one topic, because the minute it covers 2 or 3, you've got 87 people weighing in on it, and you've got to go through a thread, and it's not smart
Mhm.
business. Even if I'm responding to something, if it's not on that topic, I'm going to start a fresh email. What it should look like, it should be as important to any writer as any other business document. What is somebody going to say when they see it? Oh, look, good, or, oi, here he goes again. Good grief. And it all adds up to an impression of us as really professional, or maybe not quite. And it's maybe not fair. This guy or person may be harder working than any 17 people, but the impression, the feelings we have can outweigh the logic of he's early, he's late, he's always here, he's always taking on work, can't write an email to save his life. God, he's stupid. No, don't give them that kind of ammunition if you don't have to. Okay. I mean, it's harsh, but it is also real to some extent. So I think they should look professional.
Oh, I think we're at a point now where we're going to kind of wrap up a little bit. Just real quick, anything changed with your work from 2020 with COVID? Has anything really fundamentally changed? How has that worked?
People have time to finish books. Heaven help us. They've had more time to either dream one up, get back at it, or finish it and say, hey, Susan, can you help me? I have been slammed. I mean, seriously. Now, the one thing I want everyone to understand, if you ever want to talk with me about a book, I don't work on fiction. I know a couple of other people who work on fiction. I work on nonfiction. I work on business books, annual reports, things of that sort. Anything that has a table of contents is a really good idea for me. I'm not a structured person. I'm a high eye from hell on the disc system. I mean, I'm the one that jumps off the cliff and says, I had no idea it was that high. Oh my goodness. But in my work, I'm shockingly detail oriented because I have to be. At the end of the day, you're going to respect me or you're not. And I want you to shine. So all I know is I have no idea where I was going with that. Thank you for letting me
that makes 3 of us then. So we're even, right? But no, you talk about people have time to write books and.
Okay. And they do. And I am seriously busy. I'm working on 2 anthologies at the moment. I'm working on 3 other shortish books, like 80 pages, not big deals, but each one of them has got to come in a sequence, and each one of them has got to get my full attention, because that's just how I roll.
Cool. Real cool.
Well, let's wrap up. Susan, you've been a wealth a fount of information today. And if we had to have some takeaways, what are some guidelines or things you want us to kind of take to heart and try to implement as best we can? What are some things that our viewers really should know?
One or two really good tips.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. All right. One of them would still be, if you're writing something and you continually use the wrong word, please check for it in your writing. Don't check for the one that's the right word. Don't trust spell check. Spell check only does one thing. It checks spelling. If you spell it correctly, it says, send it, you're good. Yeah, it works. And the other is, don't beat yourself up too much if you're not perfect in this. You've probably got so much going on in a world that most of us can't begin to comprehend or understand, that the fact you can't write perfectly is not a problem. That's what they have other people to help you. That's the village concept. I can't organize a webinar. I haven't got the first idea about it. I can talk at one. I can shut up at one sometimes. But each of us brings a different skill set. Last thought for me. I learned a long time ago, please don't ever ask, how smart is that person? I'd rather we all ask, how is that person smart? Then we see the person for who and what she or he is. It's not how smart is he. You can have a very high IQ and be dumber than a cockroach crossing a street. Or I've met people like that. They're very smart, but there's moments. I'd rather say, how is he smart? Where are his strengths? How can I help him fit into the world I need help with? So that's my last thought.
Yeah.
You guys are great. Thank you.
Susan Rooks, our grammar goddess. Hey, Teddy, I'll make up a story and then I'll turn it to you, and maybe you throw it back to me. I'll introduce next week's guest. But the older I get, the more I realize I don't know. As a young guy, and I knew everything, and I didn't need no stinking help. But I think as I get older, I realize that there are a lot of things I don't know, whether it's how to behave or just in general, other topics. And I always say it's a big world and we can learn from other people. And so I have certain skills and strengths, if you will, that can help complement with an E.
Yeah. Compliment.
There you go.
Compliment. E.
With an E.
Complete.
Not an I.
Compliment.
Yes. So just know that here again, nobody's perfect, and we try to do the best we can. Thankfully, there are tools that can help us, but Susan brought up some excellent points about learning, let's say one of them, the its and so forth. And whether you learn this stuff as a kid or you develop it over time, either way, I think it all works out. I was, I guess, either blessed or cursed, depending which way you want to look at it. Let me get the ruler out, as a kid. Anytime I would say something that some kid at school had said, I'd come home and I'd get corrected. And, I guess it became frustrating at times, but then I got tired of getting yelled at. So I learned stuff, but here again, it's a journey. And I know, Teddy, you've written a couple of books, and I'm sure you could speak to that about editing. And I see resumes all day long from bright folks that may just not realize the difference in different words. And so part of my role, and that's where I can compliment them without embarrassing them, but to say, hey, you know what? I don't know how to do what you do. Yeah. I'm not you. I don't have your personality. I don't have all of these things. Here's what I have and where I can perhaps add value to you. So again, everybody has value. It's just a matter of, is there a niche that maybe you can fill that can help people get to where they want to go? And thank you again, Susan. Teddy, I'll throw it to you and then maybe toss it back to me. We still have a few minutes left, so maybe we'll do a lightning round of words here to see which one is the right word to use. I don't know. We'll have to make that up. Teddy, you got a story?
I do, man. I do.
Yeah, okay.
And, Susan, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
Absolute hoot and full of ideas. So I appreciate it. What was the word you used? You're a wild duck? You called yourself a wild duck at one point, I thought you said. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I did, but it doesn't sound familiar. But anyway. Yeah.
I don't think you said crazy duck. I thought you said wild duck. So, but it was a lot of fun, and you really dropped me some ideas to get me thinking. Hey, look, I wrote a proposal one time for a significant amount of money, and it got turned down. It was exactly what they wanted. They told me what their budget is. I was within their budget, and I knew exactly what they wanted, and that it got turned down.
Ah,
The lady I sent the proposal to called me and said, I want you to know why we are not accepting your proposal and why we will now start looking for someone else to do this work. Because I spelt the owner of the spelt the company owner's name wrong. And I had many other, my words, pathetic grammatical errors in the text. Pathetic. And she said to me, there's no way in the world I can give this proposal to my boss. And she says, Teddy, I'm so disappointed in you.
ooh,
I'm not giving you another chance.
ooh, ooh.
Now, what did that teach me? That taught me a lot of what Susan just shared. Write it down, look at it again, read it out loud. My new proposal model is this. I write a proposal, I go do something else, and for 15 minutes, and then I come back and I read it again. And I decided at that point that I needed more help. So I went back and studied English again. My wife gave me the AMA book.
Yep.
And I actually went to a community college to take my English course again to get better at writing. And then I subscribed to Grammarly. Why do I share this with you? Because it freaking matters.
To me, it does. We're judged rightly or wrongly on a lot of external things, that some of which we have control over, some of which we don't, because we don't know any better. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And if you were like me as a kid, most kids don't grow up saying, I'm going to be good in grammar. I mean, there are so many things that they're worried about in school. What teachers are teaching is rarely any of it, because you can't know you're going to be 30 or 40 or whatever number when you're 12. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't pay attention. And one day you wake up and say, oh, whoopee, I don't have the faintest idea what I'm supposed to do with that. Uh-oh.
Hey, I got one. Okay, time for a lightning round. We got about 3 minutes left, and I'll introduce our next.
Okay.
So I'm making this up as I go, so I don't know how much lightning we're going to generate here. Let's look at a hyphen.
A hyphen.
Hyphen versus a dash, or as they would say here, the dash.
Yeah.
So the dash. It's actually
it's a dash.
I'm gonna go there. We have a high A White Sox baseball affiliate here, the Winston-Salem Dash.
Yeah.
And it was so named incorrectly because Winston-Salem has a hyphen between Winston and Salem.
Nope.
But nobody calls it a hyphen. It's a dash. And so that's the nickname of the team. What's the difference between a dash and a hyphen? And you see them. I use them all the time in the articles I write, and I have no flipping idea what's supposed to be in there, and they don't correct it. So either they don't know, don't care, or that's just Randy being Randy. But yeah.
Do you want the answer?
I want it.
Oh, okay. A hyphen is the tiny mark. A dash is either the two tiny marks next to each other, hyphen, hyphen, or it's the N dash EN, which is slightly longer and solid, or it's the M dash EM, which is much longer, that I don't happen to like as it happens. Whatever one you use, be consistent in any one document. Please don't go from the two little ones to the long one, the two little ones to the long one, because you're going to make readers stark raving crazy.
Where are those things?
I know the hyphen. Oh my gosh, what are you doing to me, buddy? The hyphen's up at the top somewhere.
And you type it out, right?
I know.
I put a dash in there. Yeah. It's the hyphen, not the underline, but it's the one below. Anyway, then it auto corrects it into a longer.
Oh, it does?
A longer. Yeah, mine does.
Some don't. I don't like the longer one. Here's the other piece. You can have space before it or after it. Be consistent. I happen to like space around them. I think that the point of it is to showcase something you're writing about after the dash. But the American system says no space. The British system says space. I use space because I like the look.
We could go on all day.
Oh my gosh,
we could all day. Susan, will you please join us again? Would you please come back another day? Because we have a lot more stuff I'm sure we could tackle.
Would you ask me again?
You better believe I'd ask you again. That would be great. Love to have you back.
Thank you.
We've had a ton of comments. We thank you for that. One of the folks that you steered me to is going to be our guest next week. It's going to be Gary
Yes.
Foster out of Denver, Colorado. He'll be joining us to talk about redefining retirement after and life after age 50. He's going to talk about the third age. So you want to tune in to find out what the third age is and how that applies to you, because if we're lucky enough to live long enough, we're going to hit all three of us are going to hit the third age.
And do you know what today is?
What is today? Is today his birthday?
Mine.
Your
Oh.
birthday. Happy birthday over there. And
Randy,
Actually, it was yesterday, but it's close enough.
We need to put that in the onboarding notes so we know when her
we
birth-
can do that.
And I'm in that third group. That's why I love Gary Foster so much, because he's writing about it, and it's very real. A lot of us are living long enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And
He's
so
terrific.
we'll dive into that topic next week. We hope you'll join us. Teddy, why don't you take us home? All right.
Hey, Susan, thank you very much for coming. Randy, good seeing you. It's 1 o'clock. Hey, everybody, thanks a lot. Invite your friends to the show. I promise you that Randy and I will keep putting in every effort we can, every ounce of energy we got into making this freaking fantastic and worthwhile. See you later.
Have fun. Take care. Have a good week.